The billionaire slid a check across the table and said, $1 million. All you have to do is tell me the truth. I actually laughed because I thought it was some kind of cruel joke. Then he opened a worn photograph and turned it toward me. My heart stopped. In that picture, standing beside my parents, was a little boy who looked exactly like me. The problem was, I had never seen that photograph before. I couldn't speak. I stared at the picture until my hands started shaking. The billionaire watched me carefully and asked, "Do you remember this day?" I told him I didn't. He leaned forward and quietly said, "You should. It was the day your family disappeared from my life." Before I tell you what happened next, if you enjoy stories about family secrets, betrayal, and unexpected truths, subscribe to Family Betrayal. And just so you know, the faces, photographs, backgrounds, and scenes shown in this video are visual representations created only to help imagine the story. I wanted to leave, but something inside me needed answers. I asked him why he had that picture. He told me his name was Daniel Mercer, one of the richest men in the country. Then he pointed at my father in the photograph. "Your father worked for me," he said. "And 30 years ago, he stole something from me." My anger rose instantly. My father had been gone for years, but I couldn't stand hearing him accused by a stranger. I pushed the photograph back and told Daniel he had the wrong man. He smiled sadly. "That's what I believed too, until yesterday." Then he pulled another photograph from the envelope. And this one showed something that made my entire childhood suddenly feel like a lie. The second photograph showed my father standing beside Daniel, but that wasn't what scared me. Behind them was the same house where I had grown up. I recognized the front door, the cracked window, even the old oak tree beside the driveway. I whispered, "Why were you at my house?" Daniel looked at me for a long moment. "Because it wasn't your house." My stomach dropped. He explained that 30 years earlier, my father had worked as Daniel's personal accountant. Daniel had trusted him completely. Then a fortune disappeared from one of his private accounts. Before Daniel could find out where the money went, my father vanished with his family. But there was something Daniel couldn't explain. According to his records, my parents had never officially reported having a son. I felt cold all over. "That's impossible," I said. "I was their son." Daniel pushed a folder toward me. Inside were copies of old documents, medical records, and one hospital photograph. The name on the birth certificate wasn't mine. It was another name. I looked at Daniel and asked, "Who am I?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he said, "That's the truth I need you to tell me." I wanted to walk out. I wanted to tear every document apart and pretend none of this had happened. But then I noticed something written on the back of the old photograph. 3 words. "Protect him. Always." The handwriting looked familiar. It was my mother's. My eyes filled with tears as memories from childhood started coming back. Her strange fear whenever someone mentioned Daniel's name, my father's locked desk, and the warning he gave me just days before he died. He had grabbed my hand and whispered, "If anyone ever asks about the photograph, tell them you don't remember." For years, I thought it was just the confusion of a sick old man. Now I realized he had been protecting me from something. But what? Daniel opened the final page of the folder and said, "Your parents didn't steal my money." He paused. "They stole you." And then he told me who my real father was. I stared at Daniel, waiting for him to say he was mistaken. Instead, he slowly pushed a second birth certificate across the table. My real father was Daniel Mercer. For a few seconds, I couldn't even breathe. The man sitting across from me wasn't just a billionaire. He was the father I had spent my entire life believing had never existed. Daniel told me my mother had worked for him before I was born. They had been together briefly, but when she became pregnant, Daniel's family pressured her to leave. Daniel said he had been told she wanted nothing to do with him. But years later, he discovered the truth. My mother hadn't abandoned him. Someone had paid her to disappear. I felt betrayed by everyone at once. My parents had raised me, loved me, and protected me, but they had also hidden the truth about where I came from. Then Daniel admitted something that changed everything. "My money wasn't stolen by your father," he said. "Your father was trying to protect it." He explained that a trusted business partner had been secretly moving money out of Daniel's company. My father discovered the fraud and realized that exposing it would put my mother and me in danger. So he created a fake trail. He made it look like he had stolen the money. Then he disappeared with my mother and me. I couldn't understand why they had never told me. Daniel lowered his voice. Your father planned to tell you everything when you turned 18. My chest tightened. He never got the chance. Daniel reached into the folder and handed me a final envelope. My name was written across it in my mother's handwriting. Inside was a letter. She wrote that they hadn't hidden my identity because they were ashamed of me. They hid it because they were terrified someone would find me. And at the bottom was one sentence that broke me. Your real father has been searching for you since the day we disappeared. I looked up at Daniel, tears running down my face. He pushed the $1 million check toward me again. I don't want you to take this for your silence, he said. I want you to take it because you deserve the truth. But there was one problem. The person who had paid my mother to disappear was still alive. And Daniel knew exactly where he was. Daniel took me to a quiet office the next morning. I expected to see some old criminal hiding behind a false name. Instead, the door opened, and an elderly man walked in. I knew him immediately. He was the lawyer who had handled my father's estate after his death. My heart sank. Daniel placed the original financial records on the desk. The lawyer stared at them and finally admitted the truth. He had been the one who helped my mother's former employer force her to disappear. He had also created the false documents that made everyone believe my father had stolen Daniel's money. For 30 years, my family had carried the blame for someone else's crime. I was furious. I wanted revenge. But then Daniel stopped me. Your father spent his life protecting you, he said. Don't destroy what he protected. That sentence changed something inside me. I refused to use the $1 million to punish anyone. Instead, Daniel used his influence to clear my father's name publicly and restore the money that had been taken from him. Then he gave me something worth more than the check. A small wooden box. Inside was a photograph of my mother holding me as a baby, and a letter from my father that I had never seen. He wrote, if you're reading this, then we finally failed at keeping the truth from you. I'm sorry. I wanted you to grow up knowing love before you learned about fear. I cried harder than I had in years. For most of my life, I thought my family had lied because they didn't trust me. Now I understood they had lied because they loved me. Enough to carry the burden themselves. I eventually accepted Daniel as my father, but I never forgot the parents who raised me. And I learned something I wish I had understood much earlier. Sometimes the truth hurts because it arrives carrying years of silence, but a painful truth can still set you free. If you had been in my place, would you have taken the $1 million, forgiven your family, or demanded justice? Tell me what you would have done in the comments. And if this story touched you, share it with someone who believes family secrets always stay buried. Subscribe to Family Betrayal for more stories where the truth may be hidden, but it never disappears. Because in the end, money can change your life, but knowing where you truly came from can change who you are.